What if I told you that some of Hollywood's most beloved stars didn't actually die, but vanished into thin air, leaving behind elaborate clues that suggest their deaths were carefully choreographed disappearing acts? A retired Las Vegas mortician confessed he was paid $50,000 to falsify death documents for one of America's most iconic performers, admitting, "I can tell you with absolute certainty that the body in that casket wasn't who the world thinks it was." From Elvis Presley boarding a flight to Argentina the day after his death, to Michael Jackson allegedly jumping out of a coroner's van, these aren't conspiracy theories. These are documented irregularities that would raise red flags in any standard death investigation. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on Hollywood's most persistent mysteries. The 10 legendary stars who may have orchestrated their own disappearances in what could be the greatest performances of their careers. 1. Elvis Presley, the King's greatest disappearing act. On August 16, 1977, the world received news that seemed impossible. Elvis Presley, the undisputed king of rock and roll, had been found unresponsive in his bathroom at Graceland. At just 42 years old, the official cause was a heart attack. But for millions of dedicated fans, it was just the beginning of one of entertainment's most enduring mysteries. When you examine the circumstances surrounding Elvis's supposed death, the inconsistencies are startling, explained a Memphis-based journalist who has investigated the case for over 3 decades. We're not talking about vague theories or wishful thinking. We're talking about documented irregularities that would raise red flags in any standard death investigation. Let's start with the most basic question. Who exactly identified Elvis's body? Remarkably, this critical task wasn't performed by medical professionals, but by his father, Vernon Presley, who was devastated by grief and heavily sedated at the time. No fingerprints were taken. No dental records were checked. Then there's the matter of the death certificate itself. Elvis's middle name was spelled Aaron on his tombstone, while throughout his life he spelled it Aaron. Elvis was meticulous about details like that, noted a former Graceland employee. The idea that he wouldn't have caught that mistake on something as permanent as a tombstone just doesn't align with the man I knew. If you're finding this shocking, hit that subscribe button right now. Join thousands of truth seekers uncovering Hollywood's darkest secrets. And here's where it gets truly bizarre. According to airport records discovered later, a man using the name John Burroughs, an alias Elvis had used for years when traveling, purchased a one-way ticket to Buenos Aires, Argentina, paying in cash the day after Elvis's reported death. This forms the backbone of what became known as the Elvis witness protection theory, that federal authorities helped Elvis stage his death to escape threats from organized crime figures who had discovered his cooperation with law enforcement. 2. Andy Kaufman, the ultimate performance artist's final act. When Andy Kaufman died of lung cancer on May 16, 1984, at the age of 35, even his closest friends weren't entirely convinced it wasn't just another elaborate hoax. With any other celebrity, death would be accepted as the final word, observed a comedy writer who worked with Kaufman during his rise to fame. But Andy spent years conditioning his audience to question everything about him. He didn't just break the fourth wall. He convinced you there wasn't a wall there to begin with. Most tellingly, Kaufman had repeatedly discussed faking his death with friends and associates as the ultimate expression of his unique approach to performance art. He even specified that if he were to do it, he would return exactly 20 years later. What makes Kaufman's case particularly intriguing is how secretive he was about his illness. Even many who worked closely with him were shocked by the announcement of his illness and subsequent death. Don't let this story disappear. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss these jaw-dropping revelations. While this particular incident was later revealed to be a hoax orchestrated by Kaufman's brother Michael, it reignited interest in the possibility that the comedian's death had been his greatest character yet. The hoax within a hoax is exactly the kind of layered deception Andy would have appreciated, the friend reflected. Even if he really did die in 1984, he created such an atmosphere of doubt and questioning around his public persona that his legacy includes this permanent question mark. 3. Tupac Shakur, the rapper who knew too much. September 13, 1996. After attending a Mike Tyson boxing match in Las Vegas, Tupac Shakur was struck by 4 bullets in a drive-by shooting and died 6 days later. At just 25 years old, one of rap music's most influential voices was silenced forever. Or was he? Tupac's death never made sense to those of us who knew him well. In the months before his death, the rapper had become increasingly paranoid about threats to his life. He talked constantly about needing an exit strategy, recalled the producer. He specifically mentioned faking his death as a way to escape not just his enemies, but the entire identity he had created for himself. Most significantly, Tupac had adopted the stage name Machiavelli for what would be his final album. The reference was to Niccolò Machiavelli, the Italian philosopher who had famously written about faking one's death to fool enemies. The most compelling aspect centers around a potential escape route: Cuba. Tupac's aunt, Assata Shakur, has lived in Cuba since 1984 after escaping from a New Jersey prison. She was granted political asylum by Fidel Castro and has been there ever since. Cuba would have been the perfect refuge, explained the producer. A country with no extradition to the U.S., where his family already had established connections, and where a famous American could live relatively anonymously. For Marilyn Monroe, the starlet who knew too many secrets. In the early morning hours of August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Brentwood home. The official cause: probable suicide by barbiturate overdose. But persistent theories suggest her death wasn't suicide at all, but an elaborate extraction operation. Marilyn's final months were a perfect storm of risk factors, explained a Hollywood historian. She was involved with both President Kennedy and his brother Robert. She had access to nuclear secrets through her ex-husband, Arthur Miller, and she was increasingly unstable and indiscreet about what she knew. From a national security perspective, she represented a genuine concern. We're halfway through these shocking revelations. Hit subscribe and help us reach 10,000 subscribers. You won't believe what's coming next. This theory gained surprising support in 1964, when a patient at a Canadian psychiatric facility began insisting she was Marilyn Monroe. Medical staff noted that the woman knew intimate details about Monroe's life that weren't public knowledge at the time. She remained institutionalized until her death in the late 1980s, never wavering from her claim. 5. Jim Morrison, the Lizard King's Paris escape. On July 3, 1971, Jim Morrison was allegedly found dead in a bathtub in his Paris apartment by his girlfriend, Pamela Corson. No autopsy was performed, and the official cause was listed simply as heart failure. Morrison had been openly discussing faking his death for months, claimed a music producer who knew Morrison during his final year. He'd talk about it after shows, during recording sessions, sometimes even in interviews. He'd become increasingly frustrated with his image as a leather-clad rock god. He wanted to be taken seriously as a poet and writer. The circumstances surrounding Morrison's alleged death contain several elements that have fueled speculation for decades. First, only Pamela Corson saw his body before it was placed in a sealed coffin. Corson herself died of a drug overdose in 1974, taking whatever she knew to her grave. Morrison's own father, a high-ranking Navy admiral, publicly questioned the circumstances of his son's death, stating in a 1980s interview that he had never seen a death certificate or any official confirmation beyond media reports. Admiral Morrison wasn't some conspiracy theorist, the biographer pointed out. He was a military man accustomed to chain of command and official documentation. The fact that even he expressed doubts speaks volumes. 6. Michael Jackson, the king of pop's great escape. On June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson, the undisputed king of pop, died at his rented mansion in Los Angeles. The official cause was cardiac arrest induced by acute propofol and benzodiazepine intoxication. But almost immediately, a counter-narrative emerged. Michael's financial situation in 2009 was catastrophic, explained a former music industry executive. He was over $400 million in debt, leveraged against his catalog rights, with creditors closing in from every direction. The This Is It tour represented his last chance to generate enough income to stave off complete financial collapse. According to this perspective, Jackson found himself trapped between financial ruin if he canceled the tour and potential physical collapse if he attempted to perform. The Dave theory is compelling because it aligns with Jackson's documented interest in prosthetics and disguise, the biographer pointed out. Throughout his career, he had worked with the top makeup and effects artists in Hollywood, often using prosthetics in his videos and even, according to some sources, occasionally in public to move around unrecognized. From Elvis's mysterious flight to Argentina to Michael Jackson's alleged appearance as Dave, these 10 cases share remarkable similarities. Unusual cremation timelines, limited witness verification, documented desires to escape fame, and persistent sightings that refuse to fade. If these revelations shocked you, subscribe now and share this video. Help us reach 10,000 subscribers and keep bringing you the truth Hollywood doesn't want you to know. What do you think? Drop your theories in the comments below.